Welcome to the TheEatingCast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Vincent. And today we are joined by a good friend, Kurtis.
Hey everybody. I guess if I go with my real title, it's Second Lieutenant Kurtis Smith, United States Army Reserve.
Okay.
Nice.
Welcome. So, Curtis, you go by Kurt, correct?
Yeah, Kurt's good.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what I'll address you.
Awesome.
All right. And Vince, what do we have to eat today?
This is a sad excuse for dinner.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sure you guys have worse, right? MREs?
Oh, yeah.
Well, MREs aren't really. They're not like.
Compared to this, I'm sure.
I don't know.
I don't know, it's a full course meal sometimes. So
Okay.
This is a full course meal sometimes?
yeah, well, the MRE is, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Sandwich.
So, a little backstory real quick. We were just working a marathon, and so I just grabbed like 3 sandwiches from the marathon, and we were running a little behind, but yeah.
I'm rolling my eyes at you, man.
Dude, man, we were supposed to get out at like 4:30, but more people were like coming in, like, oh, my hamstrings, my calves.
Yeah,
and,
so we have a lot of people that are doing that.
Yeah.
And unfortunate for us, a lot of them, no offense to the runners, but after running 26 miles, you tend to kind of smell a little bit.
Oh, dude, I know. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah.
So you're doing like on the ground hamstring stretches with him
Yeah,
stuff?
and
Yeah.
like,
Oh, probably right,
you know,
probably.
pushing it up here, the socks is right here. I'm like, bro.
Oh, man.
God damn.
It's pretty wild. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, we got 3 little half sandwiches.
Yeah.
So I got roast beef and cheddar.
Same here.
And
Okay.
I got turkey and provolone.
Odd one out.
Oh, man.
I just
Alright,
grabbed.
you're paying for the next meal then.
Yeah, I am.
All right, so
We're just crack
Kurt.
this open real quick, friends.
go ahead and give us a little background about you. You know, who are you? What do you do? Yes, I know you said you're second lieutenant at the.
Army Reserves right
Army
now.
Reserves,
I don't have a
okay.
unit yet.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess starting here, working my way back, I'm the 2019 recipient of the HPSP scholarship through the Army,
Okay.
which is Health Professions HPSP, Health Professions Scholarship Program.
Okay.
And basically what that is I'm getting my last year of school paid for,
Oh.
and
nice.
then a monthly stipend, and then I have my internship, my postdoc, and then 3 years of work after I get licensed with the Army.
Okay.
So kind of was a nice little stop to get some cash before school and kind of go on to what I wanted to do anyway.
Mhm.
So getting a job there.
Okay.
We keep working my way back. I go to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology right downtown Chicago, Illinois right now.
Oh, awesome. That's what we just were.
Oh yeah, right
Yeah, for
downtown.
the marathon.
Was that where it was? I thought it was Roosevelt.
Roosevelt?
That's
That's
pretty much
nearby.
downtown.
Yeah, I'm over on
you were
Wells.
somewhere else.
He was.
Yeah, like Wells Street.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So the school's on Wells Street, right next to the Merch Mart. In fact, we have a couple classrooms actually on the 4th floor of the Merch Mart.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Kind of like a smaller school, but
Yeah.
really nice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've been going there for, this makes it my 4th year there.
Okay.
Next year would be the internship, and then I will get my doctorate degree
Oh,
in
nice.
clinical psychology.
There you go.
That is wild. I guess that's one way to get your doctorate.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
full program. So
Yeah.
you know, you get the master's degree along the way, and then you get the doctorate. Sometimes they're broken up, depending. But I'm also going for a PsyD, which is like a different designation from what like a psychiatrist would be, which is an MD.
Okay.
And then kind of like what your college professor would be, or even some practicing physicians are PhDs.
Okay.
The only difference is that the PhDs basically kind of focus a little bit more on research
Okay.
than we do. The PsyDs focus more on testing, like neurological testing and psychological testing.
So you'd be like doing like actual like clinical trials or.
Kind of, sort of. So it's kind of like we have a whole bunch of tests that kind of tell us if there's anything wrong with different sections of the brain.
Okay.
And then like, you know, you have your traditional testing. That's like psychological testing, which would be like the Rorschach. If anyone's ever heard of that.
I'm not familiar.
It's kind of like the ink blots, you know, like what do you see here,
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
I always see butterflies.
Yeah,
The
there's-
Watchman, right? There's
Yeah,
guy
there's
that's
a-
like, that's what he's called, the Rorschach or something.
Oh.
Have you heard of
Mhm.
Watchmen?
The cartoon, correct?
Yeah, like the heroes or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it's like a graphic novel
Yeah.
kind of deal.
He's pretty
Yeah, I remember
badass.
that. They had a movie.
He's like the Batman, I think. No, there's someone else that's like Batman or whatever.
Yeah, he's like Night Owl or something like that. It's Batman.
yeah.
I don't know who Rorschach would be. If we're talking like Marvel or DC universe.
I think they're probably DC, to be honest. I don't know.
Oh, I don't.
Someone fact checked us, please.
Fact check us.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, with that said, so that's pretty cool that you're going through this route, right, and kind of pursuing like a PhD in like psychology and clinical psychology and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, it's kind of like before we continue, thank you for your service. All right. So that being said, how long have you been in the reserves, or were you ever active duty, or how did you decide? Well, why did you decide to go that route?
Some of it was kind of like some past stuff.
Okay.
I can get to that. But how long I've been in is literally just a matter of months now.
Okay.
Because that HPSB scholarship, once you get that, then you are put in as a reserve unit, so that they're able to pay you. And then come August of next year, once I complete the program, my PsyD program, then I will be put as active.
Okay.
And then my internship, I will be an active member of the military.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Going through and doing that stuff. Yeah, so it was still pretty fresh, but I do know a lot about military stuff. I have quite a bit of family in there.
Okay.
And then as to like what got me there, long story short, had a family friend who committed suicide.
Oh, okay.
PTSD related.
Mm-hmm.
He was a combat medic in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, I was like 19 at the time, so I think a sophomore, my undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going for biochem as my actual major. And I've been doing that for about a year. And I kind of had like all these questions around like, why would someone do this? You know, kind of like all the things you have when you lose someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just had all this energy that I wanted to just devote to something. And I was like, hey, I'll take my first Psych 101 class in college, right? I had some psych classes in high school, and they were kind of fun and cool, but they really didn't get down to the nitty gritty or the meat of the problem or anything like that. So started taking psych classes in undergrad, and I was like, hey, this stuff's really interesting, and I really like it, and it kind of gave me a route to kind of direct a little bit of that grief and kind of have an outlet for that.
For your friend so he killed himself over PTSD, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming he didn't try to seek resources? Is that why he like tried to bottle it in?
So he actually was seeking resources at the time.
Gotcha.
But he was put on a wait list because there's such a need, or at least at that time there was such a need that there weren't enough programs to meet the need. So then they were already servicing people who had gotten in prior to him. You know, it's like a first come, first served kind of basis. So he was put on a waiting list, and just in that time, he decided to take his life.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow. So then, like, the way I see that, that really sucks.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, definitely a lot of people that are, that have served and that are still currently in active duty and like that, and others that are no longer in active duty and still seeking that help from the VA and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for them to get that help, they are pretty much a number in the system at that point.
Yep.
Which really sucks, because a lot of them are really, like, a lot of people really need help, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that said, what's your kind of like viewpoint on that? And it's like, what would you kind of say is like the tipping point, or like for the VA or the actual military to kind of like make a change in regards to kind of maybe getting more physicians that can either cater to the cause or the need of all of our servicemen?
Mm-hmm.
So like, what would you say would kind of be pivotal for that?
Well, I think it's already happening.
Okay.
A little bit. I forget what time the like HPSB scholarship came up, or when the different branches started offering a lot more money for people to come in for like incentives, but it was pretty recently. I'd say within probably the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
People can fact check me on that. I'm not sure. But what they've been doing is offering really, really large bonuses to people who want to enlist now that already have the degrees. And they've already come up with these programs like the one I'm in to try to get people who are still studying to come in as like help. So there's already a mission to get numbers within all of the branches.
Okay.
The VA itself too offers some of the most like high-end training that someone can get coming out of school.
Yeah.
And they offer a little bit more money as far as like internship wise. So like when you go off to get an internship, there's a stipend that you're given for the year. and you'll probably get like health insurances and stuff. But a normal like civilian one would probably be around $24,000 for the year. You know, it's about $2,000 a month. So not a lot of money, really.
Right.
But just enough to kind of live off. But the VAs usually offer a little bit more. They're probably like around 35 if I would average them all out. And then with the HPSP scholarship, they're running 60 to 90 grand. So there's quite a difference in that payment.
Okay.
And then the VA coming right out for postdocs is paying a lot more money than other like civilian like private practices or hospitals would pay. So like for someone to become a psychologist, they have to go 4 years of undergrad, 5 years of graduate school, and then there is a part of that 5 years is a 1 year internship. Then they become a doctor. They get the degree. Then they have to have 1 to 2 years of a postdoc work before they can take what's called the EPPP, which is kind of like the licensing board test. And then once that happens and they pass that test, there's different like percentages they need to get per state. Once they pass that test, they're licensed, and then they can work full time.
Okay.
So kind of getting through those points for the VA and the military, they're going to be paying people a lot more money to try to kind of entice people to come in.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much what's on the forefront right now. If we're going to kind of dive into the VA system itself, there still isn't enough people for the like quantity of patients. And especially now that it's becoming more aware on like the MD route, they're starting to refer more people in this like psych.
Okay.
So then there's a lot of problems that come from that too.
Right. How do you? Well, actually, let's go back a little bit. So you kind of intern. You are an intern, right? Currently at the.
Yeah, so I'm at what's called an extern.
Extern, right?
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
And then what kind?
What's the difference?
Yeah, right.
What kind of things have you already like witnessed or seen? That you feel like are kind of messed up, or maybe like changed your perspective, or even confirmed your perspective on what's going on in the military, with PTSD. Yeah, I'll start with that.
Okay, maybe in like mental health in general too.
Yeah.
Hit it. So far, I've had 3 externships. So I've had about 3 years of experience in the field. My first externship was what we call a diagnostic practicum. So I was doing testing mostly. I wasn't seeing clients, like on like a therapy basis. It was more they came in, you did testing, they left. Then I did community mental health over in Skokie for a while. And then right now, I previously was at Jesse Brown VA, doing testing. We're doing like a research project, so I was on a research team there. They were looking at PTSD, depression, and then EEG stuff of the brain, trying to map the brain out, see if there's any differences between the two, or even if they were combined. So you had like 3 different groups. And then currently, I'm up at Captain James A. Lovell Federal Healthcare Center up north in North Chicago, on the SDTU, which is the Stress Disorders Treatment Unit. It's a residential program for combat vets only with PTSD. And in my time at Jesse Brown, I'd say that it was just packed.
Yeah.
The whole time I was there, the whole time, like the whole hospital.
Yeah.
Just utterly packed with people. Just so many, and I would sit in the psychiatry like wing of Jesse Brown, and while I was doing research or I had my door open, kind of scoring tests, I would probably hear. I was there for 8 hours. I'd probably hear upwards of 90 to 100 people come in and out of doors.
Damn.
So there were like 6 psychiatrists on that floor right there in that hallway I was in, and they were seeing people by every 15 minutes.
Jeez.
Yeah, and the psychiatrists, they don't really do therapy. They're just more the person that like prescribes the medicines for people.
Yeah.
So it's easier to get a vet meds than it is to sit them down for an hour's worth of therapy, right?
Right.
So that seems to be, this is just my own opinion,
Yeah.
seems to be what was kind of going on. It's kind of like if they weren't too much of a danger to themselves or others, it was like we're going to try to get them meds so that they're okay, but then try to get them in to see a therapist. And sometimes that could happen quickly, sometimes it might not.
Right.
You know, it was just like the supply and the demand.
Right.
The demand
right.
is super high, supply is real low for
Mhm.
the therapists there. Coming into Captain James A. Lovell up north, a little bit different. So people are kind of applying into the program there, and we only have 26 beds. So you can think of, yeah,
It's crazy.
combat vets, all the combat vets that possibly have PTSD. So they're like the whole population of the United States, 1% may serve in the military, and then they say 1% of those people will be combat vets or be deployed somewhere in combat.
Yeah.
So the 1% of the 1%. And out of those people, we can only see 26. And there are not that many programs like that. So
That's crazy.
yeah, the Lovell Federal Healthcare Center with the 26 beds we have, that is the only one that I know of in the Midwestern area that takes strictly combat veterans with PTSD.
Mhm.
There's another one over in Grand Rapids that has a PTSD inpatient program, a residential program, but I don't think that's strictly to combat vets.
Is this a funding issue, or is this like people not taking the initiative to like create more programs?
I really couldn't tell you on why there aren't any more programs, because it seems like our program is doing great work and it's
Yeah.
kind of cutting edge,
Mhm.
but it just doesn't seem to be implemented anywhere else.
Interesting.
So it might be funding, because I know it's extremely expensive.
Right.
So we're looking at per veteran on the floor about $525 a day for them to get programming.
Mm.
So, you know, multiply that by 26, and then it's also a 7-week program.
Yeah.
So multiply that by 7 weeks,
Yeah.
we're talking a
Numbers
lot
add
of
up.
money.
Yeah.
And it's very expensive to upkeep this kind of a thing.
Mm.
So, like in their eyes, it's a lot more cost effective to just put patients on or individuals that don't seem like they're at high risk on
Mhm.
medication and kind of keep them there.
Yeah, or medication and outpatient
Uh-huh.
programs. So if you can get an outpatient therapist, that's a lot cheaper because you're not in living
Mm-hmm.
for 7 weeks. So it's like we're taking, you know, kind of the people who are at wit's end at that point, like the
Yeah.
people that could potentially be a danger to themselves or know that they need more help than what they've been getting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much who we take.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So, like, with that being said, right, like, it's like you said, about roughly 1% of the U.S. population will be the ones that are kind of like serving in the military, and within that 1%, or yeah, that 1% of civilians, or not civilians, citizens serving, another 1% of that, so the 1% of the 1%, like you said,
Mhm.
are going to be the ones that are combat veterans.
Mhm.
So with that said, it's like, how do you feel like a lot of those individuals too, like, don't necessarily like seek out the help that they need due to kind of like a like I've never been in, I've never served personally, so I'm not sure how like training, boot camp, and all that stuff goes about, but like I would assume like it kind of sets the tone to be like very like shut in about your emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. The training of any military unit is to make sure, for the enlisted side at least,
Mm-hmm.
is that a person will do what they are told when they are told to do it. To take orders
Mhm.
is basically the whole idea. To be a combat almost machine. So there's a lot of depersonalization that happens. So you're no longer you are part of a unit. You know, you're part of the greater good of the military at that point in time. That's why boot camp is, you know, however long it is. I think it's like 9 weeks
Yeah.
or so. And, you know, you always see those movies where the drill sergeant's yelling at people and making everything confusing. And then, you know, they serve a couple purposes for that, you know, but
Mhm.
one of which is to let you know that you are no longer just you.
Right.
You know, it's that you are now part of something else.
Yeah.
I think the one that one movie comes to mind when you kind of like say that stuff. I'm not sure if you've ever watched it or anything like that, but the movie is, I believe it was called Full Metal Jacket
Mm-hmm.
with gunnery sergeant, I forget his name.
I know that
can
movie
see
was
him.
funny, right?
Yeah, Lee. No, it actually wasn't good.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
People made a meme about it, I guess that's why.
Mm-hmm.
People did turn it into a meme, but
Yeah.
like I would say that's probably one of the more iconic films that really portray like serving as a unit and like becoming desensitized to like emotions but also kind of shows the side effects of that, right? With like PTSD and individuals that were in that one unit, that one, I can't remember his name, but like he committed suicide in the movie, but he didn't commit suicide in real life, obviously. But like yeah, he pretty much killed himself. He offed himself. So it's like it really shows you that I think it's a big problem even within like boot camp. I'm not sure if that actually, if that was just like over exaggerated or if that is actually a thing that happens.
Yeah, I mean, for the time it was probably pretty accurate.
Yeah.
For how hard the drill instructors were on the guys and gals, or no, it was just guys back then.
Were you in the training?
No, I have not gone through any kind of a training yet. That happens when I go to the internship. I'll go through what's called BOLIC, which is not boot camp. BOLIC is Basic Officer Leadership Course.
Okay.
Much lighter, and afterwards I will also be going to I can't remember the name of it. It's a commissioned officers course or something like that, where I'll learn more intensively. That one would be more of like my boot camp, but BOLIC is kind of known as Forks and Knives School. It's just like how to act like an officer. Because I won't be a combat unit. I'll be medical, so I have a different job to perform than someone who would be enlisted.
Right.
Hence why their boot camp's a little bit more intense. They learn how to kill, that kind of a thing. And that can weigh on someone. It definitely can. But yes, back to kind of like your point is that you're desensitized to emotion because if you have emotion, that can get in the way of the mission. Right? If you are under fire and people are dying around you, you don't have time to, cry or kind of sit down and talk about it, right? You just have to do what you're told to get out of the situation. And that can cause kind of a lot of the issues that we're seeing now with people. As far as like the PTSD, there's moral injury, and just kind of like guilt, survivor's guilt, a lot of self-blame going on.
It's crazy because some of the like multicultural Greek life, like fraternities, some of them actually go through like kind of like a military-esque boot camp kind of thing. And it's crazy because I had a friend who actually killed himself because of the same thing. He, through the process with we were desensitized. You're in a line, so they treat you as a unit. Like there's no personal pronouns. It's just this, like they call him like this person. Like we don't say I or whatever, right? Or anyone. And so that weighs on him too. And because of that, he felt like he couldn't express his emotions to his brothers because like that came off as weak. And then that just goes into hypermasculinity. It's like, why can't society like view men as being able to like be vulnerable? And that's a problem, right?
Yeah, so, big problem we're seeing all over the place. Right? So in my community mental health time, so last year when I was working there, I did what was PAPE programming, so partner abuse intervention programming, basically rehabilitating men and women who had committed a domestic violence crime. And a lot of the times I was seeing, we had men and women groups, but I was seeing mostly men. There was definitely an uptick in men. And a lot of that was just kind of what you were learning or what you were learned as a kid, right? So society tells boys nowadays, if you fall down, just to suck it up, don't cry. I'm pretty sure probably all three of us have been told not to cry at some point in time in our lives.
Oh man, I can't even count how many times that has happened in my childhood growing up. But I mean, granted, like every family structure is going to be different, right, to an extent. But what I kind of like noticed with like a lot of my other Asian friends and like Asian colleagues is like we go through like we have a lot of commonalities in terms of like just like whether it's physical abuse or just kind of like just like emotional teardowns from your parents. Like a lot of them actually suffered through that stuff, but a lot of them also kind of like just dealt with it, and it was like we saw it as like the norm. It was like normal for us to kind of like get treated in certain ways, because in reality of it, they, like, not that our parents don't know any better or anything like that. It's just that was how they were raised. That's how they were taught. Like when they were back at home, right? Like when they were kids. So it's kind of like a habit that gets trickled down the tree, I guess you could say.
Very much so.
So it's like, how would we, as like a society, kind of like walk away from that if like habitually like we're more prone to kind of do that just because it was done on us when we were younger, right? It's like, in a sense, you can say that's kind of like PTSD, correct? Like it's as like childhood trauma.
Yeah, childhood traumas, absolutely. Yeah. I'd say like the first step is always to recognize, right? I think there's a lot of push with society nowadays, like with spanking has come out. Like a lot of research is around that. And just knowing that it's wrong or that it leads to maladaptive things down the road, kind of adaptions that aren't good.
Yeah.
Down the road, and if we know that's happening, it's kind of up to us to step in there. You know, if we have children later on down the road, just to not or try not to do the same things that maybe our parents did when they raised us. You know, but I mean sometimes that also can backfire. You know, so a lot of times, like nowadays, you're always hearing about kids like not being respectful and like, oh, we should have spanked our kids, that kind of thing. But there's a way about disciplining your children that you don't need to enact violence. You know, there should never be like a punishment involved. There needs to be a teaching rather. So it's kind of like the way we view it. If we can reframe that, then we're probably better able to kind of stop the generational violence that is continuing through families. You know, but until that happens, you're still going to see it in some families, right?
Sorry, I'm just laughing because like it's like people in bed, it's like, oh, spank me. Like, no, that's childhood trauma. Don't do that.
It's coming back.
It's going back. Stop. No.
Those parental issues, you know, it turns into like a fetish, right?
Oh, God.
Oh, God, no. Let's not talk about that. That's really, I guess that does happen for some individuals. Like, they just seek out that kind of abuse or that kind of self-harm. Because
it's like playing something out, right? It's playing something out from your childhood, something you maybe not have processed, and that's kind of where it kind of gets muddled, you know, in the brain, where this is what I like or this is what I want, you know. But not to knock it, because I mean, people can have whatever they want.
That's true.
You know, and what people do in the bedroom, not my business.
Yeah.
So long as both people are consenting, that's all I care about.
Yeah. As long as both parties consent. Remember, consent is key.
Yes. And the lesson for today. Consent is key. Oh, okay.
All right.
So, Kurt, you work with Dr. Schweitzer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's faculty assistant, basically a TA.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
What do you think about his, or actually let's start with, what is his 12 steps method?
So, the book I think you're referring to, he's actually taking the Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps and kind of applying them in a clinical sense. So AA is more of like a religious kind of therapy, you know, taught. I don't have much experience with AA myself. When I was doing substance abuse, I followed like ASAM, which is the American ASAM, I don't know, something against substances. So like American Substance Abuse, something with M, company, management, I don't know. Yeah. I just know a lot of acronyms. They all get funneled up here. Yeah. But it was a little bit different. But AA, he was trying to kind of implement it in a clinical sense. So, you know, you're trying to merge both the religion aspect of it to like a theory of thought and how we can apply it as clinicians. Because we wouldn't, as a clinical psychologist, we wouldn't be the ones that were implementing AA. Yeah. Because it's usually like a group kind of thing that's run by someone who is not a doctor. So, yeah, we were trying to figure out, or he was doing research into how we can implement it if someone we were seeing was going through it. And he had quite a few interesting takes on it, as well as some like techniques which is really kind of like where I've read that part of his book. So I have to be honest, Dr. Schweitzer, I haven't read the full book. So probably gonna get in trouble for that.
You're gonna lose that TA position quick now.
Yeah, no. I'm a TA for a different class. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's cool.
Interesting. Okay, so you're not really like religion, right? It's just the concept. Is that I'm kind of confused.
Well, AA takes into the idea that like God is doing something.
And he's all forgiving.
Like you have to forgive, like you have to forgive yourself, and you have to let God forgive you.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, that's why like AA and all like anything with the end and the A, you have like NA, AA, CA. Those are all usually done at like a church or a community place or setting, and it's just because it does have that religious overtone to it.
Yeah. I also know like I think hospitals have it too. Mm-hmm. In some cases, I know Swedish had that.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's differences between like AA, substance abuse programming. Mm-hmm. There's like IOPs, which is an intensive outpatient for substance abuse. There's all sorts of different things for it, but like AA is just like one modality of treatment. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with, I guess like as you did kind of work in these kind of clinics where you dealt with a lot of individuals that were substance abusers as well. Mm-hmm. How would you rate the kind of like quality care that they were getting in terms of like, if like what I'm talking about is like in terms of them going through with it and then from there fully staying away from that substance in the future?
So most of the time, if someone goes through any treatment program for substance use, there's a high rate of relapse. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know the exact numbers. People could fact check this, but it's somewhere up with like 80% of people will relapse after they've gone through it one time. So the biggest thing, like when I was seeing people, I was with a forensic like population, so that means they've gone through the court system basically. So they were coming in because they were told to, or they had to meet so many hours for like court or as part of their probation, something along those lines. And you'd see varying degrees of people coming in. Some people were like, yeah, it's time for me to stop. Like I got in trouble, I need to get straight. Some people were there just to get the hours, and as soon as they were done with me, they'd probably go out and use again. But really it was just like the buy-in. Mm-hmm. So no therapy or anything is going to work unless you want it to. Is what we're finding. So I mean, I could talk at someone all day, and if they don't want to change, I can't change them.
Yeah.
You know, people have only control over themselves. So I'd see the people that bought in and really wanted to change and kind of get out of their substance use habits. They change. You know, you could really see it. They work hard, they get through it, and then there are always the people that are kind of sitting in the back, quiet. You know, and wouldn't do the worksheets or anything like that. So, you know, varying degrees, kind of like school. You can think of it. I mean, it's a learning opportunity, and some people are going to be doing it, some people aren't. And that's just how it is.
Yeah. How does that affect you though, emotionally? I guess because it's like that's like eventually your full-time job, right? Trying to help and change people. So knowing that you can't really fully change their lives, and you can see like how they're reacting, like they don't want to. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's tough. Yeah. It's definitely tough.
I can imagine.
Yeah, more so on like a one-to-one basis. If you have like a client and they aren't doing well, you kind of take that to heart. But a lot of it, you have to compartmentalize. You know, you have to have work stay at work, and kind of know that what you're doing is the right thing, and to really believe in it, and that it's up to them to kind of take it. Because if you don't, you're gonna go crazy.
Right.
Like it's gonna drive you nuts. You're gonna sit awake at night. I mean, I think we all as therapists kind of work on that aspect. Because I mean, there's still clients where I'll go, like, drive home. And I'll just be driving and I like realize I haven't listened to any music. I've just been fuming the whole drive home, or they'll keep me up at night because I'm like wondering, like, the next day I'm going back, like, what can I do? How can I help?
Yeah.
And sometimes you gotta just be like, no. Like, I have to have my own life outside of this, and that, like,
and also like your own. You gotta maintain your own quality of life as well in order to help other individuals.
Exactly. It's like the school is always preaching self-care to us.
Mhm.
Like just kind of getting out there and doing your own thing while you're at home. Because, I mean, during this time while we're working and going to school, there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of time to be had. So kind of getting in the habit of doing things for you as a therapist.
Yeah.
Or even to get your own therapy. It's highly recommended that therapists seek out therapists. And there's like specific programs and specific therapists that
That's so
only see
interesting.
therapists. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So like with that kind of like preach at least through school and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are your kind of like your go-to things that you do outside of work and school that kind of keeps you level-headed?
Kind of setting aside time for myself to
Uh-huh.
do things I enjoy. So I like video games.
Okay.
Nice.
So I'll play.
All video gamers over here.
Heck yeah! I mean, right before I came here, I beat Resident Evil 2
There you go.
as Leon. So now I'm playing
Oh,
as
man.
Claire. It's good. It's good stuff.
Nice.
That's wild.
But just like fun stuff like that. Something like I can turn like my brain off
Mhm.
and do.
Escapisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, go out there, watch a movie. Just watched Joker this weekend. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So with that,
Big
what-
hit on
what's
mental
your-
health
mental
in
health,
there.
right?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
huge
It's
hit
a
on
really
mental health
big
in
hit
there.
on mental health. I was actually just gonna say that. Like, what are your like what do you think about kind of like that portrayal of? I mean, I don't know what kind of like
Wait, did you see it?
illness. Yeah.
Oh,
People
I didn't
seen
see it.
Okay.
I don't care though.
Okay.
You can spoil it.
Oh, no, and plus anyone who's listening, I don't want to spoil it too much,
Yeah.
but it's like a very good depiction of someone suffering from mental health
Mhm.
problems. Not going to diagnose them or anything like that, but yeah, like it was really interesting to kind of see that as a therapist and be like, oh my gosh, like this might be what some people experience.
And that just paints Batman as an asshole that just like beats his ass.
Sends him in the Arkham, beats his
just
ass.
like beats
Man.
his-
Yeah.
That's wild.
if you think about it.
No, yeah.
It's kind of fun. Yeah, it's funny.
definitely.
Like, you
It
just,
goes
like,
to show that it's like, dude, that is. It really goes to show, like, and it paints a picture that, in our society at least, like, it changed the perspective of Batman and the Joker, right?
mhm.
Because before this whole backstory, I mean, people probably like figured out that kind of like dialogue a long time ago, right?
Mhm.
Like about how the Joker was and how he became who he was. But for those that aren't really that into it, like I never grew up like reading the comics or anything like that, and kind of
Mhm.
like going through like a lot of fandom, right, to kind of like see that kind of story come about. But yeah, just as a average onlooker that enjoyed Batman for what it was, for the time being, it always depicted the Joker as a cynical man that is just out there for blood.
Yeah.
Right, and seeing the movie, right, through I guess his lens really kind of it really changes your perspective on things, and
Yeah.
I feel like it really, for me at least, it opened my eyes and it made me think that like I'm doing more, or I'm noticing it more, and I'm kind of like putting myself in check on it. It's like just judging people and kind of like non-discriminatory or even discriminatory, like just on a casual, like day-to-day basis, right? You're walking to work or you're going to work. You pass by all these different people that are doing their own thing, right? And then you see them, they could be wearing like certain clothes or the way they dress. You're profiling people, right? The way they act, the way they walk, right? You're profiling people here and there, and it's like, for all you know, that individual could be like suffering, like for instance with mental health issues. They could have a lot of troubling things that are going on in their own life, right? And they're just struggling right now. And when you see that, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't judge people by how they're acting that day, right? Like especially like happens in Chicago a lot of road ragers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've dialed back on that. I used to be really, really bad, but now I'm a bit more passive in terms of like just road rage. I don't really mind it. I'm gonna get from point A to point B anyways, so might as well enjoy the ride. And it gives me a lot of time to self-reflect, and just seeing people that kind of like are doing that now. It's like I used to be like, oh man, these guys are crazy and doing their own thing. Like you're gonna get someone hurt, or like, man, that's why that's why you should have woken up 10 minutes earlier, right? And then from there, I'm like, after watching the Joker, I'm like kind of thought about it again. I'm like, maybe that guy just had a lot of work that night and he just overslept, you know, or maybe that person's been in the hospital all day, you know, caring for his loved ones, and then went home expecting to only sleep, like, close his eyes for like 30 minutes, but an hour passed and now he's late for work, and it's like, dude, that's wild.
It's hard because, like, you know, that's like, it's human nature to just like look at something and judge right away, profile something. So like being able to recognize that is an issue and already starting, like, that's a good first step, like you said, recognizing, and then like rewiring yourself to think differently. Like, that's, I mean, change starts with you, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I mean, yeah. That was like when we got to that car accident in your car.
Man, that was wild.
That guy was...
In all honesty...
I was actually surprised because I thought you were going to rage. But
I was really... I just played it passive. I'm like, dude...
But then you helped me think about it because you're like, he probably was like on drugs or something. He was paranoid and...
Because he was like saying like, why are you following me? Why are you tailgating me? Why are you doing all this stuff? And I'm like, dude, you need to relax. We just happen to be going the same way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we just happened to go in the same way, right? He made a left, I made a left.
Yeah.
Down the street, he made a right, I also made a right.
Yeah.
And then down the street again, I made a right, and then he also made a right.
Oh no.
And then that's when he he cut in front of me. Like, I mean, I was on a different lane going towards a left turn lane. He stopped on his brakes, cut around to oncoming traffic, and just like came through and just sideswiped my car, and I'm like, are you all right, dude? Like, why are you following me? Why are you playing games? Like, you think this is a game?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't think it's a game. I'm just trying to bring my friend home right now.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Some people are just, that's just
good thing you played that on the passive route, right?
Because imagine he had like a gun, right, or something.
No, I was like, imagine you had a gun. He's probably got something. He's probably amped up, or something really just ticked him off that day. And he's just on edge the whole day.
Yeah.
And it's like, just relax. He's having a bad day. You're not really having a bad day till now. It's like you got the long stick. He got the short stick.
I was like, I was texting after I got. I was like, yo, let's find his car and bash the windows with a bat.
I'm like, dude, no.
You come and find it. That's what happened there.
And he was like, dude, chill. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Oh god.
But yeah, it's like, just trying to see with an open eye and kind of like, I guess, play that devil's advocate. It's like, it's like, what if this, what if that, it's like, yeah, it's worked out so far. I haven't had any confrontations since then.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. It's very good. But yeah, so where were, we just
talk about self-care.
Then we took a left turn right there.
Self-care,
cool.
Joker, and not profiling people. Trying not to.
So then, I guess what that says, like, what are your current like projects, right? In terms of like what you're trying to like pursue and kind of like your passions for therapy and everything like that.
So I mean, each one of us to graduate out of the program has to complete like a doctoral dissertation.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be like my biggest project.
Okay.
What I'm doing with that is I'm looking at PTSD and quality of life. So there's questionnaires out there for both things. One I use is called the PCL-5. That's like a PTSD measure. And then I'm using the WHO QOL, which is like a quality of life inventory by the World Health Organization.
I did that.
You've done that one before?
I've done that a long time ago. Or not a long time ago. It was like a few years ago. I was taking a... What do you call it? Oh, crap. I feel so bad. Because my professor was... So my professor, Dr. Yom, he... Oh, crap. What class was it? Oh, no. It was so bad.
Everyone's getting in trouble with their professors.
Yeah, no. I'm so sorry. And no, it really sucks because he actually passed away recently. And I remember we were doing something with like mental health or just kind of like understanding self-care and kind of like the I think he called it Covey's 5 steps or something like that, or something along the lines of, oh man, I feel so bad. I did pretty good in that class too. But yeah, I guess it just wasn't really my cup of tea. But it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Like there's these to take these tests and see where and how you score is really interesting.
This is quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quality of life inventory is kind of like what we call it.
Okay.
But it goes through like a whole bunch of domains and like how well do you like your life right now? It's
Right.
kind of basically what's going on, and like how able are you to do all the things you need to do. So I have those two measures in it, and I'm looking at different modalities of treatment. So I'm looking at individual treatment, group treatment, and then animal assisted therapies. So like with service animals and like horses and things like that.
That's awesome.
And I'm putting out a survey for that, and veterans. It's with veterans too. So veterans take it. It's like a 30-minute survey. I get all the info back, and I'm trying to see, of the three, like which one has the best quality of life, and also trying to advocate a bit more for animal assisted therapy, because I think service animals are kind of nice to have for people with psychiatric problems, but a lot of the times they don't get them unless there's some other physical problem wrong with them. So there's like a need you could implement these dogs for, but they're also expensive. So it's kind of like seeing like the pros and cons to these animals.
I think they do take those tests, but I don't.
I'm just you don't have to. I'm just kidding.
People probably take. I mean, people probably take tests no matter what, right? It's just like
they're like
it gets tossed
world
around.
Yeah, they're like world renowned stuff. So like everything's
Yeah.
pretty much used around the world as far as psychology things.
I'm not gonna lie, like I was a pretty depressed piece of shit. But then I got these two ferrets, and like they actually helped me get better.
Oh yeah, no, like a lot of veterans that are coming out are just purchasing animals. There's a lot of programs out there to get them animals. Just like everyday kind of animals, but there's different layers to that. So like you have like your normal dog that you get off the street, right, or from the shelter.
Yeah.
Get shelter animals.
Yes.
Then you have kind of like emotional support animal. So it's just something that you kind of designate yourself that my animal's a social support animal, and technically they're not allowed to be anywhere that like a normal dog wouldn't be. But then you have like different levels of like service animal and then like psychiatric service animals. And those two are considered like an extension of your body. So that's why those people can bring their dogs on planes. They can bring them into the stores. You can't really do anything, about that, because it's like having like fake leg is what the dog is at that point in time. It's like a tool to be used.
Right.
So yeah, and that's kind of like those last two are the ones that I'm more interested in. Is the ones that are trained to do something or to do a job. Because like right now they have like PTSD, psychiatric service animals that like would wake someone up if they're having a bad dream, or they can get certain things for them done during the day if they aren't able to do that kind of stuff. Like, yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
Oh, man.
And I'm more interested also along the lines of like social support for that, because a lot of times when someone has PTSD, they'll isolate. So one of the biggest factors for preventing PTSD is to have a social support system in place for someone who's suffering from that. But a lot of times when they isolate, they don't have the people in their lives that would bring them out of that. But if we were able to implement a dog, well, the isolation.
Yeah, like I mean, why do you think it is that like for some individuals at least they isolate and they don't see like, and they're so they come back from like being deployed, and obviously they're having problems, they're having issues with like just kind of like dealing with life and kind of dealing with their own traumas, and then let's say because of this they're having like outbursts or like lashbacks at like certain people in their lives that like mean good, but they can only do so much to really assist the person before it kind of comes back and bite them in the butt, right? Because like now they're putting their own like mental health at risk, kind of, and then that turns them into like an isolated individual where their social circle kind of like just completely got destroyed, and now they don't have any support. Why do you think some people, like, not saying everyone, it happens to everyone, but like for some individuals, like when they seek out that help, they just lash out, and then because they lash out, these individuals just kind of put distance?
definitely a multi-layered question there.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to answer it to my
Yeah.
best ability. So a lot of the things that happen when you kind of experience a trauma is that you're going to have kind of like a hit to your own autonomy, your ability to control like a situation, right? Because something happened, most likely happened to you. Trust gets hurt, esteem gets hurt, and when you kind of add all of that together, you kind of fall into this like cycle of thinking that brings about, like, there's might be guilt there. Guilt can kind of turn into blame, which then can turn into shame. So guilt is like, I did something bad, so my actions make me feel guilty. Shame then comes about because shame is, I am bad. So it's kind of like the whole idea of who you are is built around shame. So like your actions depict who you are, right? And once you've kind of gone down that hole into thinking now that I'm a bad person, people start to push others away. So they might lash out in anger because they have those problems with thinking like, I'm a bad person, the things I've done are terrible, and they're angry at themselves, but it's a lot easier to kind of displace that anger then onto someone else or kind of direct it towards them. So you become irritable because you're kind of thinking about these things. Trust gets hurt in that maybe something happened to you that broke trust.
Okay.
So then once that trust was broken, you kind of go through this idea of like, oh, that thing was bad. I never want that to happen to me again. So then they kind of push people away that like, oh, maybe the person didn't show up or was 10 minutes late to pick me up. I can't trust them anymore because they were late. It's kind of like this jumping to conclusions can happen. And it's just this horrible downward spiral that's like multiple factors kind of compounding on each other that makes someone kind of want to be alone at that point in time and kind of just kind of sit in their own emotions. And it's super deep and super complicated,
Holy
right?
crap. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even know that that's happening to them, which is kind of like where a therapist kind of steps in, is like, you notice these things? Like, have you thought about it this way? Just kind of having that other person's opinion and kind of redirecting it back at them is therapeutic in of itself. It kind of can help people see like what they've been doing or kind of behaviors they want to change. Yeah, let's see.
That is really wild.
Was that a good answer?
Yeah, no, that's a really thorough answer. And it
a-
kind of makes me feel like, man, everyone, if you guys have someone that just like, just isn't feeling right and isn't feeling themselves and it's kind of like lashing out and it's having traumas and just completely isolating themselves, just shoot them a text or just give them a call. Like, yo.
And I think a lot of the times, like, the families and the friends kind of get exhausted almost kind of dealing with this person and how they're acting. And that can be tiring for them. Then, they don't want to deal with it either, right?
That's rough. That's
so
really hard
kinda,
to like, oh man.
It's easy for us to say, like, just reach out, but sometimes you got to force yourself to, especially if it's family. Just kind of nudge your way in there as best you can.
It's also hard because, like you said, like if you're not ready to even accept help from like a professional, like it's not going to do any good for them. So it's so hard. Mental health is
very
a huge
hard
problem.
thought. That's a really difficult thing to think about.
Like for me, I know it's habitual because like when I feel, I actually should probably see a therapist, to be honest. But anyway,
we got right here.
I think we all could benefit.
Yeah,
definitely. I think changing that narrative too.
Yeah.
That like someone's messed up to have to go see a therapist is like not exactly. I like to think of therapists as being just someone who's not gonna judge you and who you can talk about things that you couldn't talk about with other people.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff you could say to your significant other, and then there's some things you might not want to say.
Right.
And kind of having that person that won't think differently of you is the helpful aspect of a therapist, even for people who are quote unquote like healthy.
Right.
Yeah, that's just.
Yeah, but I was saying like it's like I have this bad habit where like when I feel some type of way, like I realize I isolate myself. Like I kind of just am in my own.
You just with a
world.
wall.
No, really, like a wall, like walls, and then escapism. I'm like gaming.
Well, I mean, that's your own little therapy though.
But
Yeah.
Because then after that,
because I'm isolating myself.
And you're probably a little irritable, kind of push people away, so you're still in your little spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Damn, you just came in my life.
Yeah, right? Here I come, I'm creeping in, you know?
Yeah.
knock, knock.
Yeah.
Here's Johnny.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
That's wild, though.
Yeah, these are typical, like, defense mechanisms that we use as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's kind of like the creepy part of the therapist is just when we notice patterns. They're very likely between other people, you know.
Right.
So like when I'm like, "Oh, you're feeling irritable," you know, it's
Oh, man.
it's just because like
It's like
that's
horoscopes.
common.
Yeah.
It's common, and that's kind of like we have to do that and kind of take those jumps sometimes,
Yeah.
like to assume that about people, because then it opens up like a little bit of the mysticism with like a therapist, like, "Oh, how did you know that?" You know, and then people buy in more.
Right.
And the whole idea is you're playing this dance of like the buy-in and like what you want people to believe. It's almost weirdly manipulative, but at the same time it's for like a good
It's trying to get
That's
them
what
out
all
of
scammers say.
yeah, right. Just pay me a little bit of money, I'll let you know a little more, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like how we just said,
Man.
go seek some help. No, they're scams.
Oh.
Mm.
So, man. Crap, I forgot what I was gonna say, but
It's deep, we're all
that is
sitting
really
here
deep.
thinking, right?
Yeah, no, that's really deep. That's really deep, and it really kind of goes to show that, yeah, everyone definitely could use like a psychiatrist, but I feel like a lot of people don't, because of that whole fact that they're too, whether it's like afraid to share, what's on their mind,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like the inner workings of their own brain and kind of their own thoughts and their thinking process, and also kind of like the feeling of vulnerability, right? Because now you're being vulnerable to a complete stranger that you don't know, and you gotta trust that they're out there to look after the betterment of you, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of like a really hard first step, I guess, for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's some good TED Talks on that.
Mm-hmm.
Brene Brown, it's kind of like my favorite one that talks about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, like, one of her good takeaways is that vulnerability is at the heart of every human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
In order to have a true, intimate interaction with someone, not like on a sexual level, but intimate as in being sharing,
Mm-hmm.
You have to be vulnerable with that person. And it's just different levels of vulnerability that kind of pop through.
It's kind of like you said earlier, it's like it's a fine dance or dancing between the lines.
And social media, like, fucks with that too, because it's like you're taking away that person-to-person interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so that,
wild.
Yeah, like even myself on like the phone,
Yeah.
like I can sit in front of people and talk to them every day about every problem, but I get anxious when I talk on the phone. Like as a psychologist, like what? But I think it's because I'm not with that person, physically in the room.
Because you
so
can't read the body language. You can't really feel out the atmosphere.
Yeah, so then that too with like texting and then
I
social
actually
media.
feel the same way with
Yeah.
that too. It's like every time I text, like with my prior relationships, like whenever I try to communicate through text, I feel like I'm always doing something wrong, or I always overthink like texts, like they're coming at me like I did something wrong, or they're like kind of yelling at me, or they're angry at or upset at something, and it's like, what the fuck did I do? They're like, no, bitch, you didn't do anything. Like, what do you mean? But like the way I read this is like, like I did something wrong, and I gotta fix it. Like, what the fuck? And they're like, the fuck?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, you think we've kind of evolved into these creatures, these social creatures that use all of our senses when we're talking to someone,
and we do,
right?
We do.
And then when we take those senses away when we're talking and communicating, we
You're
aren't
just
good
left
at
to
it
ponder.
anymore.
Yeah, you're just left to ponder, right? You're like,
Yeah.
you're there thinking and trying to figure out. You're trying to, like, in a sense, decrypt the meaning behind the text.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, come home for dinner. Like, did they want me to come home to eat dinner, or are they mad and because they're mad that I didn't do something that they want me to come home now to eat dinner?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That was probably a bad example.
Did you
but
see the
yeah.
Key and Peele episode of Bad Communication?
No.
Oh, that's really funny. You guys should check it out. But it was something like that. They're like texting each other. It's like one guy was like really pissed off. The other was like saying things like, "Oh yeah, I'm down." He's like, "What do you mean you're down? Like you want to fight or something?" Or whatever. But it's real funny. Key and Peele, Bad Communication.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, check that out.
But yeah, with that being said, we're gonna wrap up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are there any What's one bit of advice you would like to leave our listeners?
Oh
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh
I'm
no.
a psychologist.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a deep one.
I'd say challenge your own biases and beliefs surrounding mental health and what it means to have different disorders, be it depression, be it schizophrenia, or anything like that. Challenge your own biases towards it, because chances are that person is just kind of going through a sickness just like anyone would with like the cold or the flu. You know, they're correctable. People are able to come out of them, you know, and it doesn't make someone dangerous or weaker or anything else, because we know people have been suffering from this stuff since the beginning of time, basically. So yeah, if we can change the narrative that we ourselves have around it, then maybe we will be a healthier society.
There you go.
And that's mental health.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, so thank you for dining with us. It was definitely a pleasure to have you on. Definitely learned a lot in regards of like what I can do better and kind of like how to keep an eye out on my own mishaps, on my own or ill judgment or ill intent for certain thoughts, you know. And
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, this was great. Thank you for coming on. Like Chris said, very, very knowledgeable. So
Thank you guys.
think I definitely took something away from this, and I hope our listeners took something away from this. And you know, that advice was really good. So yes. Do you have any shameless plugs you want to put in there? Any social media, if you want? Nope.
Certain things to look out for.
Okay.
No, I think it's all good for now.
Okay.
We're dry.
For sure.
Right. Awesome. So again, thank you for dining with us, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.